early. So, let me go back. The enemy within. I don't like to think of our employees as enemies, but when you look at the numbers behind losses associated with employees, it's pretty significant. 2024 ACFE, the median employee-related loss was $140,000. If they broke it down by category of employee, just your regular garden variety employee, it was 60,000. Managers, it was 184. At executive level, it was $500,000. So, and in 22 years at CUNA Mutual, now TruStage, looking at the losses that we had, the vast majority of them were employee related. I mean, obviously there's losses from outside, such as a robbery or bad checks, things of that nature. But the big losses were all related to employee theft of one sort or another. So, again, we don't want to consider our employees the enemy, but when you look at the numbers, you have to really take that into consideration of they're the ones where we need to have our most controls because they're the ones that caused the most losses. So the Fraud Act defines fraud in three main categories. We know there are far more categories than just three, but the Fraud Act broke it down into three. False representations, somebody misrepresenting the information that they're giving out, or it's misleading or untrue. Wrongfully failing to disclose information. Perhaps they didn't tell somebody about a fee that's associated with a particular product. Abuse of position. That's probably the most related to the employee side of it. They were expected, all the employees are expected to have a duty of care with the finances of the credit union, and when they don't, that is typically an abuse of their position. So then we go into the common types. Embezzlement, we all know what that is. Loan fraud. I can tell you about a credit union I went into. It was a small credit union. It was a one-person situation. And I was doing a loan audit and looking at the trial balance, and I see all these loans with paid-ahead due dates for months. And I said, where are these files? She said, I'll have to get them for you, but the power is going to go out in an hour and you're going to have to leave. I said, well, I'll be back tomorrow. So I come back the next day. I go, where are the files? She says, they don't exist. It was just all paper. It was, I booked these loans, I took the money, I advanced the due dates. I said, well, thanks for having me write a long report. Yeah, unauthorized transactions, making out transfers from members' accounts to their own accounts, fee manipulation, whether they don't charge fees to family members or themselves or reverse them inappropriately. Oh, it is working. It's not on the screen, so I'm kind of freaking out here. So here are some of the most common methods. Exploiting weaker, non-existent internal controls, that's typically where we find it. Abusing the system access that they've been given, or having access that they don't need and they figured out how to use it. Overriding established procedures, yeah, that's a big one. Colluding with other employees, that's another one where there were, I believe it was 5 employees at one credit union that were all not being charged overdraft fees for some reason. And they all stuck to their story. We don't know how that happened. Sure you don't. The IT guy set you up that way. Oh. Taking advantage of inadequate segregation of duties. Again, that was probably the one with that one-person shop credit union. There were no segregation of duties. She was it. Oh, I shouldn't have said she. They were it. Well, now you know, it's too late. Well, they're not around anymore, surprisingly enough. Creating fraudulent documents, the loan fraud, or manipulating records. These are some of the ways they get caught. Obviously, internal audits, external audits, supervisory committee. We see a lot of our supervisory committee being very involved, and then we see some of them that have the involvement of, we'll do the cash counts and that's all we're gonna do. That's not adequate. Member complaints. We ask about that because we want to see what members are complaining about. We will even go on to Yelp and put in a credit union's name to see what people are saying. We'll look on their website, we'll look on their social media pages to see what people are saying. And does the credit union respond? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Obviously, employees bringing a concern to management is another way of finding these situations. How we caught them, the management reviews, or they hire a external or internal audit firm to do the reviews of employees, exception reports, file maintenance, that type of thing, reconciliation discrepancies. Why is there no money in the cash fund? Surprise cash counts. Oh, that's a good one. We were called into a credit union to do a cash count, and for some reason they had a stack like this that was supposed to be $80,000. And allegedly, it was just sitting inside the money safe because the member was going to come in and pick it up. And it had sat there for weeks, not protected. So anybody that opened the safe, it was sitting right there. So they call us in to do the count. We open up the package. 20, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The first bill was a 20, the last bill was a 20. And we found out that the employee that was the one that said, yes, these members are coming in to pick up the funds, took frequent weekend trips to Vegas. And now we know how she financed it. Unfortunately for her, she lost her job because of it. Not a big surprise. But her supervisor lost her job because of it, because she was not adequately controlling her personnel. Why would she allow that person to leave allegedly $80,000 sitting in an open area within a money safe? That was totally out of internal control policy. Again, ways to, based on NCUA guidance, to prevent employee fraud, have strong internal controls. Amen to that. A clear fraud policy. Don't commit fraud.
There you go.
Sign your name at the bottom. It doesn't have to be detailed. Don't do something stupid. Mandatory vacations. And I don't mean, I'm going to take Friday off. That means a week with no access to any credit union systems. Did it switch? Because my paper didn't.
Yeah.
Thorough employee screening. Did you do a background check on them? Is the information they gave you accurate? Have they embellished any of it to make them seem to be a better candidate for your job? Again, proper segregation of duties. All of these things are ways to help prevent employee fraud. So, hold on. I didn't get that page. I skipped it. Look, it was 2 pages of paper, sorry. Regular audits and verifications of member statements, restricting access. We have done several what we call access level reviews, where we'll look at employees. Okay, this is employee and this is what their job description is, and we look at what the access is that they have, and we're like, well, if they don't do anything with lending, why do they have access to lending capabilities? Well, it's just a template. Well, can you turn it off? And we get that, quite a bit. And because it's easier to just put a template out there, put a name associated with it, than to customize it to what that employee actually does. Now, I'm not saying that's universal, but it happens more than it should. Training. We provide training to a lot of, we provide training to a lot of our clients, as well as encouraging ongoing training. We will ask about training for every audit that we've done. When was the last time you did my favorite, UDAP training, and I get the blank stare pretty much every time. And so it's new loan training, UDAP training, new account training. And we'll go to their branches and ask people, ask employees, when was the last time? If I hear that it's been 2 years, come on. Why is it taking so long to do training? It should be at least annually, if not more. Adequate bonding, making sure that you can get the employee bonded by whichever insurance company you have your bond with. And obviously, utilizing technology, making it harder for our employees to do things that would create a loss for the credit union. So, why do they do it? I needed the money. I'm going on vacation. My kid's in private school. I can't afford the house I'm in. You take your pick. It can be any of those. The opportunity is they have figured out a weakness in the system. And how they rationalize it is, I deserve this. I don't get paid enough. I do all this and they don't recognize it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's how it happens. Oh, I skipped the page again. So again, by the way, I have to apologize for my 1990s graphics. I'm sure every other presentation you've been to this week was way more, let's say, what would you call it? Modern. Yeah. That's it. That ends right here. You're not going to see that. I had my daughter do this for me in probably about 10 minutes. And these graphics would have been screaming at you. There would have been lights going off, bells and whistles. Yeah, not me. That's not my thing. So, what creates the need? They might have a drug habit. Again, maybe, like I said, kids in private school, it costs a lot of money. Boyfriends or girlfriends, I'm sorry. It can happen. Drinking, gambling. Oh, you mean like that lady that did? Oh, I said it again, lady. God. I am so sorry. This is not being broadcast, I hope. She got fired, it doesn't matter. Family-related problems. That was one where we were at, I won't say the specific location, but it was a police credit union. How about that? And we're looking at this file maintenance review, and we see, why are all these reversals being made? I mean, there would be a deposit and a reversal. Deposit, reversal. Well, okay. So we talked to the head teller because she was the one doing every single one of them. And every single one of them was to a Spanish surname member. So essentially what was happening was the member would come in, and because she was the one that, I did it again. Because they were the one that spoke Spanish, they would deal with her. She would take their deposit, give them a receipt with the balance, reverse that out, and take the money. And if they called or got their statement and said, hey, there's a problem with the balance, she would just put the money in, technically, and then they would call and it would say that it's okay, she'd reverse it back out again. So this happened. That is so embarrassing. That's my phone, but that's okay. I'm not going to answer it. Okay, so I'm out here doing this. And so the CEO was crying at his desk when we brought this to her attention because she was a long-time trusted employee. Duh. She had all the access, she had all the knowledge, and none of the controls. And that's how she was able to get away with it. The sadder part about it was, we had to call the police. Well, that was easy because it was a police credit union. And they came in, they gave her a nice new set of bracelets, and Kurt walked her out of there. I felt bad for her. The CEO didn't even want to press charges. I'm like, well, you don't really have a choice at this point. The cops are here. They know what's going on. But again, it was a long-time trusted employee. The members trusted her, and she took advantage of her position. So what creates opportunity? Oh, just what we were talking about, lack of management oversight. That was the CEO of that police credit union. It was the teller supervisor at the credit union before that, where their employee took the Vegas trips. not following internal controls, leaving the stack of $80,000 open for anybody to have access to. Employees find the weakest link, and they exploit it. I love that this works. So, it got out of control. Okay, I'm not paid as much as I should. These are all the reasons, or all the rationalizations they have for committing fraud against your credit unions. I like that last one though. It's just isn't that big a deal. Well, okay, remember we talked at the beginning, the regular employees, $65,000, that's not a big deal. Executive, $500,000, that's not a big deal. Sure it is. But I do also like I'm going to pay it back. I'm pretty sure the individual that was going to Vegas was thinking that same thing when they were losing all the money gambling. Guess what? Never got paid back. Okay, so now, one of the things I'm kind of hoping here is we've got a few case studies, but at the end, and I think there's 3, but I would really encourage you all that if you have questions, first of all, don't ask. And then, no, I'm kidding, of course. But I think we learn best from others. What happened to your credit union? How did you find it? What did you do to control it from happening in the future? So, obviously, if you want to participate in that, that would be awesome. Okay, I gotta make sure that I'm going. So, this was the vault lien. How about that? Again, it was an embezzlement, $389,000. They basically, this one was even better than the one that put the ones in between the 20s. They put fake money in between. I love that. And again, it was a gambling addiction. It went on for a year, June 23 to June of 2024. And they were able to get away with it because there's lack of controls. It was caught by another employee when they saw the fake currency in the vault. Well, it took them a year to find that out. Again, dual control might have been the way to go with that. Surprise cash counts, restricted vault access would be another way to control it. But all those things were not in place, and that's why they were able to get away with it. Okay, from 2017 to 2019, the acting manager, this is an interesting one. They maintained outdated practices. For example, not allowing members online access. What? Come on. I mean, I am old, but even I can get online. But they would establish the online access for their own use. And it was strictly related to elderly adults. And it was, a meager $211,000. He was forced to pay restitution. Don't know whether they had the money or not. The credit union didn't survive, though. So it's gone. This is one of my favorites. CFO. Now, kiting, we all know what kiting is, right? Floating checks. It's almost near impossible to do kiting nowadays because of how rapidly checks clear. If you were to attempt to do kiting today, you'd have to be writing checks every day. And even then, I don't think it would work. But this was not that time. He was writing checks. Oh my God. They were writing checks from their spouse's Bank of America account into the credit union, writing checks back to Bank of America. It went on for 2 years. And during that time, they had CPA audits, they had regulator audits, and you would think that somebody would have been looking at the CFO's account and the CEO's account. I know when we go in and do employee account reviews, those are the first two we look at. So again, it went on for 2 years. It ended up being $850,000. And when we brought the individual into the CEO's office, we basically asked him what was going on because we want them to tell us what they're doing. We don't want to tell them what we found because then they're basically admitting it. He was making $50,000 as a CFO, lived in South Pasadena. Kids went to private school. This was his way of surviving. Well, he obviously lost his job, his house, his kids were no longer going to private school. Was it really worth it? Was it? No. But fortunately, the credit union, I won't say the credit union, the auditors caught it, so the loss did not get sustained by the credit union, because it's whoever catches it first is usually the ones that don't end up sustaining the loss. But the bigger issue with this was that nobody in accounting said a thing. You would think accounting professionals, and I'm not bagging on any of you that are accountants at all, but if you could see checks coming in from the CFO going out to his wife's account at Bank of America on every 2 or 3 days, wouldn't you say something? Well, that's the question I asked. Well, didn't you think this was unusual? Well, it's the CFO. Okay, it's still wrong. But that's where, nowadays with the Whistleblower Act and things of that nature, maybe we won't be seeing this in the future. Well, certainly we're not going to see kites in the future. At least I would hope not, because like I said, it's a lot harder to do nowadays. But my favorite embezzlement, remember we said executives were how much? 500,000? This guy broke the record. And I don't mean by a little. How many of you have heard of CBS Federal Credit Union? Oh, I love that. None of you know. CEO, former NCUA examiner. I like that you're all like, oh my God. Over a period of 20 years, okay, now this credit union had zero growth, but they weren't losing money. How about that? They broke even, allegedly. For 20 years, he embezzled over $40 million. So that 500,000, phew, I'll take that. $40 million. And the only reason he got caught was one of the employees saw a $35,000 check made out to the CEO and questioned it to the supervisory committee. Well, that started the ball rolling. So, from, January of 2018 to March of 2019, it was 3.8 million alone. So, he had a house in Reno, he had a house in Mexico, he had a house in the Valley, he had 3 very nice cars, he paid his wife $5,000 a week. Honey, I am not going to pay you $5,000 a week, I'm sorry. Unless I embezzle 40 million. That's not going to happen. As you might have guessed, they did not survive. He was sentenced to 14 years in jail in order to pay 40 million in restitution, as if. And he had to turn over his expensive watches. Oh, he was also taking private jet vacations. Well, I guess you can when you're using somebody else's money. But that was one of my favorites. His wife is the one who turned him in. She just cut herself off for $5,000 a week.
Dang.
So I was a little surprised that they didn't, ill-gotten gains. You got $5,000. It wasn't like he had $5,000 coming from somewhere else. But she turned him in. And I like it what she said. She called 911 of all things, okay? She calls 911 and says, my husband's stealing money from the credit union. And they're like, what? So yeah, that I think is just classic. She was $5,000 a week, turns her husband in. I guess I don't have that problem. So I would, if you have, and if you want, to share with the audience any stories that, maybe not stories, war stories, where there was a situation at your credit union and how it was discovered. You don't have to go into great detail. You can leave names out and gender if you want, because I've blown that the whole day here. So, but is there anyone that would like to participate in that? I don't know. If nobody's saying going up like this. Yes, you? No? Okay. Okay. Yes, go, buddy. Good. Did he get perp walked out? I mean, oh, that's too bad. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, that's one. We just talked about the one case that there's only been that one case in this entire room. That's fine. So now we're going to talk about the life cycle of an employee. You know, pre-hire, post-hire. You know, they apply, you screen them, you interview, you hire, you train them. And what we look at is risk levels, you know, associated with, first of all, the position. What can they do? We look at who was involved in interviewing the individual. Did you do background checks? Did you confirm any of the information that they indicated on their application? Are there any types of agreements that you might have to have? Usually those are with the higher level employees. And if you have assigned the position by risk levels, that's pretty much the pre-hire process. But again, like I said, not every position does require background checks if they're going to be the ones that are, you know, just cleaning windows or whatever the case may be. They have no system access. Maybe they're marketing, which maybe they don't have any system access to do transactions. Your screening process doesn't need to be quite as robust. Again, assigning a risk level based on their job description and what they can do with their access levels. Usually 1 to 10, 1 is low, 10 is high, but everybody needs to be buying in on, okay, this is Bill's position, this is what he can do. You know, it's HR, it's IT, it's the manager. What's the risk level we're going to assign to this position for this employee? And it's always good to let them know, we're going to be watching you. It's not good enough just to have the cameras there, because we know most of you do have that. But that there is some software, it used to be called like footprints or something like that, where you could go in and actually see the keystrokes that an employee had done, so you can see that what account number they accessed and what they did. I don't know if that's still around, but that was something I had heard about. I had actually never run into it, but I had heard about it. But it's a good thing for you to have them acknowledge the fact that their activity is going to be monitored, because then they can't say, oh, go ahead. Somebody was raising a hand. You again.
I know a lot of people in this room probably use Jack and Reed.
Yeah.
Whatever. We love the RQ system. Kind of goes, it's kind of a, forward monitoring system. We have that built. It will log, when you search by employee, by account number, by certain strings, whatever. But you can kind of, it's not doesn't look great, but you can understand every single thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. And it should be used more often. Okay. Are we on the right spot here? Okay. Post-hire. Do they have the resources they need and none of the resources that they don't need? Can we make sure that they're not getting into areas of the system that they shouldn't have? You know, you can trust your employees to a certain point, obviously. But trust is not a strategy. Trust is just, gee, I hope they don't do something stupid and cause a loss to the credit union or the members. You know, once they're hired, trust is something they have to earn. It's not something that you just automatically assume. They have to earn the trust that you are putting on them for that position. Stop it. Okay. So I love this. It says, you know, post-hire using a risk level. You can, I don't know if you can read that. Yes, you can. But basically, someone that was given proper access and used it improperly. That's the synopsis of what they're saying here. They had proper access, they used it improperly. A company can often detect or control when an outsider, we set up so that nobody can get into our systems, but somebody that's inside has that access. So the thief that's harder to detect is the one that could cause the most damage, is the one on the inside, because we put up all these walls to try and keep people out. The problem is, it's the people on the inside, as we learned at the $40 million loss, that had legitimate access. By the way, he had 2 sets of books, so when the examiners came in, they would hand him that book. Just thought I'd throw that out there. So it's the employees that have legitimate access that are the ones that create your biggest risk, instead of the person trying to gain access to your systems from the outside. So you've got to have the levels of security. You have to make sure that there is access only needed for what they're going to do. Make sure that you've identified your high, medium, low risk employees, positions, that they're monitored, and this is what we expect from that individual at that position, and make sure that that is only what's happening. We did talk a little bit about the monitoring of activity. It could be cameras, it could be the reports that you mentioned, and those are the things that, if we're not producing them or reviewing them, they're useless. I asked one of our clients to produce for me, or if they had I believe it was an override report. Maybe that was it. Can't remember. Well, whatever the report was, I knew it was available from their core system, but they were not producing it. I think it was reversed transactions, is exactly what it was. I said, well, don't you think you'd want to know if there was a reverse transaction, you'd want to investigate it to make sure that it was for a legitimate reason? And that was the answer I got. They just looked at me like, well, we don't have it. Well, contact your vendor and get it, because that is that example that we talk about at the police credit union. Reversals, reversals, reversals. We saw it on that system, but this credit union, they didn't see the need. Well, if there is a reversal, they have to get approval. I go, do they? Well, because we have limited staff, some can reverse their own transactions. And I should have just walked out at that point. So, passive employee monitoring, let's make sure that we're looking at what they're doing and not doing anything crazy, that, they're not driving a Porsche as a teller. No, just kidding. Things of that nature. It goes beyond looking at transactions that they are performing. It's looking, believe it or not, at lifestyle. Now, this $40 million guy, you wouldn't know it because he didn't drive the Porsche or the Tesla to work. He drove the Honda. So, but again, it was a severe lack of oversight, and obviously, as I said, that credit union did not survive. So, let's say you screened them, you have a rigorous screening process, you are confident in that screening process, you know that they've got only the access they need and nothing more, and you're like, we are going to be checking everything that person does, especially for that first 90 days. That's all great. Until something changes. And what could that be? For example, I'm making sure. Let's say Steve gets a promotion. Joe doesn't like Steve and is now reporting to him. And Fred is upset. He wanted a job. He didn't get it. The decisions you make for one employee could have an impact on others. And at that point, we see this type of thing happening. Employees are not happy. You'll see usually they have a poor performance review. They don't get promotions. They feel that other people got preferential treatment. My boss is on my back. Coworker gets let go. That elevates tensions at the credit union. Rumors circulating around, reductions in workforce. All these things create anxiety for your employees. So at that point, you should probably escalate the risk level for those employees involved. You would probably do more auditing of activity, the audit logs like it talks about there, and you would want to make sure that not everybody has access to these audit logs, because those might be some of the people that you're concerned about based on this increased level of anxiety because of decisions you've made, probably or possibly in a management and executive decision. So, there we go. Does that say risk forecast?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, if you don't change the risk levels during periods of elevated risk, if everything is status quo, but you know that there's, I don't like to say dissension, but you know that people are talking, there's rumors, there's, like we talked about, Fred got the job, Bill didn't, whatever the case is. There is, and if you just think you can go skating along with that risk level, that's not going to fly, because you're just going to miss things that are probably quite obvious. So obviously you need to communicate with IT, you need to communicate with HR. Hey, I'm a little concerned about whomever. We need to make sure that we're looking at that activity on a more stringent basis, and maybe it was a 5 and now it needs to be a 9. So we're looking at it even more. Okay, there we go. This is my favorite. When somebody knows they're going to get terminated, that is now a 10.
You're one slide ahead.
Yeah.
I am? Hold on, what did I miss? I'm at the middle elevated level?
No, the second.
Oh, I didn't do that.
Oh, so you're
Okay,
one.
hold on, I messed it up here. Okay, then this one. Oh, that is actually another good one. Do you see how that is? 1 out of 2. Well, I don't think just say 50%. Maybe math was not their strong suit when putting this together. I don't know. It's okay to take corporate data with them when they leave. 51% in one, 48 in another. I found that astounding. It's not like they're taking a pen. It said it was specific to corporate data. That is very scary. And, back in the, I'm going to be dating myself here, microfiche days. You remember that, don't you? Yeah. That stuff was all over the place. Trays of microfiche data that, it's a little hard to read without the reader, but you could do it if you wanted to. But that, I know how easy that was to get out. I've heard about it. I didn't do it, obviously, but I heard about it. Okay. So I had this in the wrong spot. There we go. So, that's what we talk about. If somebody's leaving the credit union, they are now a 10, and I don't mean in looks. They are a 10 at risk. I don't care what their job is, whatever access they had should be monitored every day, because they know they're going to be let go. And it's usually better to let them go immediately if you have the ability to do that. But for sure, if they were a 5 before they were being considered for termination, and then that consideration was made a fact, we're going to terminate you, that is now, you have to elevate that up to a 10. Because if they have the access that, could cause damage, they now have a reason to cause that damage. So, when that happens, I'm on the right slide. Obviously, you need to say, HR, this guy is now risk rate 10, IT, risk rate 10. We need to be looking at everything that person is doing. And it has to be, like it says here, as soon as possible, as soon as the determination to terminate is made, this is when this needs to be upgraded to a 10. Because they're going to know before anybody else, but before you tell them is when you elevate that risk level to a 10. So, I think this is almost the last one. So if you have confidentiality agreements for intellectual properties, things of that nature, you would want to review that with the employee. Make sure that you are looking at, it says here, 30 days worth of activity prior to the termination date, and 30 days after, because you just don't know what they had done, especially if they had very high level access. And I think, what on is it? Oh, I got like 2 minutes. There it is, that was it. So, are there any questions? You guys really want to go on that tequila cruise. I think the ones in the back there, like I said, they started early. Okay, if there are no questions.